This has by far been one of the most humbling experiences I have ever been a part of. And I am so thankful and so honored that the board for this great event invited me to be a part of this. I want to tell you something from the bottom of my heart. A lot of you here don't know me. Most of you here don't know me. And that's fine with me. But I want you to know something about me. When I stand in a place like this, it's so refreshing. And it's so encouraging to be with people like you. And I want you to know that for me, I'm just a guy that I don't consider what I do a job. What I get to do is a blessing. And to spend time with you is huge for me. When I was 5 years old, I was going about as just a normal 5-year-old typically should, and living his life and riding four-wheelers and eating lots of cake and drinking lots of Diet Sunkist or whatever I could find in the fridge. And that's how my life was. And at 5 years old, I became very, very ill. I became very, very sick. And I was put in intensive care in Birmingham in Children's Hospital for 6 weeks. And I had all kinds of surgeries done. I had all kinds of tests ran. And I am considered in the medical field what is considered a medical miracle. I'm not a miracle. I'm just blessed. And so when I go back and I visit those doctors who have saw me at my worst and saw my parents, my father is no longer alive. He passed away at the age of 49. When I go back and I see those doctors and they see me at 32, a kid who was not supposed to live through the injuries that he had sustained, through the sickness that he was going through. And here I am, 32, married to a wife who is way out of my league. If we're not Facebook friends and you don't want to be my Facebook friend, that's okay with me. But you need to go see how well I married up. Okay? Easy. If you know a college coach that's looking for a good recruiter, I can do it. I recruited well out of my league. I have 2 beautiful boys. And those boys are total opposites. You ask some of my kids that are here with me, you ask them about my boys, and they will tell you that they are totally opposite. Pearson, who is my oldest, he wants everybody to be happy. He wants to take care of everybody. He wants to love everybody, and he wants everybody to have their fair share. Chapman is 4, and he does not care about you or anything else. It's all about me. I have 2 boys who are very different. But when I go back and I look at those times, my mom refers to that as some of the darkest days of her life, when I was sick, when there was no real medical answer for what was happening to me, when there was no real definition of what was going to happen and what needed to happen for me to make a full recovery health-wise. My mother is one of my favorite people in the entire world. She's special to me. She's a fighter. And when she tells you that that was one of her darkest days, and if you know my mother, you know that she does not have very many dark days. But when she tells you that that was some of her darkest time, it's something to pay attention to. Tonight, maybe you have encountered some dark days. Maybe there have been some days in your life where you felt like the sin that's in your life has mounted against you so heavily that you didn't know what the answer was. You didn't know what the plan would be. You didn't know how to recover. You didn't know how to bounce back. And Jerry Elder, who is a good friend of mine, and I love very, very much, and I'm so thankful for him, and to be able to sing with him and to worship with him is one of the greatest blessings that I could ever have received. But he put this thing on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and Jerry, I hope it's okay that I plugged this, but he put this thing on Facebook a couple of days ago, and he was asking for people's favorite verse. And he makes note of it. I've seen it. There's proof. He makes note of it in his Bible. It's called his Friend Bible. And he'll put your initials or your name, maybe your full name down beside what your favorite passage is. And tonight, my favorite passage happens to be the one that I get to share with you. Colossians chapter 1. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 13 specifically. If you have your Bible, I want you to go there with me. If you have it on your phone, that's okay with me too. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 13. He has rescued us from the domain of darkness and transformed us into the kingdom of the Son He loves. See, when I read that and I think about that and that, I open my heart and I let that pour in. For me, it reminds me that at my darkest time, something was waiting to do. Something was waiting to give me an opportunity to be successful. Something was waiting to give me an opportunity to do something that I never imagined being possible. How many of you have ever expected something in the mail? You can raise your hand, it's okay. Expected something, you ordered something, you thought it was on the way, and it just really didn't happen. Anybody ever had that happen? Yeah, it's frustrating. I was waiting on a computer one time. It's the first MacBook I'd ever gotten. And you know how those things are. You know how computers are. They're necessary. You need them. You need them for different things in your life. And this was one of the darkest times I'd ever had because UPS lost my MacBook. I was frustrated. I was angry. I picked up the phone and I said, hey, get me on the phone with Steve Jobs right now. I need to talk to him. This is all his fault. And you know what happened the next day? I got this shipment update. And it said that my computer, my package had been delivered to the front door. So you know what I did? I scurrily made my way to the front door to find what? What? Nothing. So you know what I did? Picked up the phone. Hey, says it's here. Where is it? It's not here. I need to know. Oh, well, there's some storms and blah, blah. I am the only person that matters to you. Get me my computer. This was a dark time. I need my computer. Windows is out. Apple is in. I need it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about times where you know and I know, and it's been on our heart. It's times where we felt like everything in our life was crumbling around us. It felt like every time that we looked around, every time that we were waiting on something, every time it looked like something was about to break in our favor, it goes right the opposite. We've all been in that state where we kind of felt like we were lost, like physically lost. We couldn't find the people we knew. We couldn't find the people that we were with. And what happens to you? Your heart starts to beat a little fast. Your mouth starts to get a little dry. And you start to be in this stage of just pure fear. And when you reach that stage in your life, you don't see things clearly. You don't see things the way that they're designed for us. And it's the same way with our soul. It's the same way spiritually. When we find ourselves so consumed with sin and with the world, it scares us. If you sit here tonight and you think about the sin that you've encountered or maybe the sin that you're in now, you think about how much it pulls on your heart. You think about how much it weighs on your mind. And I'm going to tell you something about sin that you already know, but I want to remind you. When sin starts to eat at you, it controls you. And when sin controls you, sin will own you. I always wait. When I order something, when something is on the way, I wait for it to be delivered. And there's a lot of things about why I wait for it. I've bought it. I've paid for it. I've worked for it. I've given everything I can to make sure that I take care of what I can take care of to get it to where I need it to be. When we look at Colossians chapter 1 and verse 13, there's something that's happening there. There's something that's designed for us so that we can understand that the darkness that is around us will not be what defines us if we acknowledge that we're lost. That the darkness has consumed who we are. That the darkness is knocking at our door, that it has owned us, that it has consumed us, that it is eating us alive when we acknowledge that something needs to be better. Something needs to change. I need to move forward. I need to change my ways. I need to get away from these things that are holding me back. Let's read it again. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 13. He has rescued us from the domain of darkness and transformed us into the kingdom of the Son He loves. Now there's another passage of Scripture that I was given that I want to share with you because it's important. Go over to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for His possession, so that you may proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness and into His marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Guys, I want to tell you something. And I try to remind my young people of this all the time. I'm a real world guy. I believe that if you don't talk about real world things and you don't talk about real world problems and you don't try to have real world solutions, you're going to be living in a fake reality. And the truth is, the things that you face today, the sins that are out there, the things that oppose you today are different than they were when I was your age. If I stood in front of you tonight and I said, yeah, I faced every single thing that you have faced, I wouldn't be honest with you. But I can tell you what always has remained the same. And I can tell you what has always remained the same with absolute confidence. And that is that you are a chosen person. You are the one that Jesus gave His life for. You are the one that God created because He needs you. I'm very guilty of saying this a lot. God created you because He needs you. He doesn't need you to be somebody that you're not. He doesn't need you to be fake to seek approval of people of the world. He doesn't need that from you. He needs you. And when the sin becomes so heavy and it becomes so dark and the things around us continue to mount and they continue to grow and they continue to consume who we are, they take the fire away from us. They take the drive away from us. You have good intentions. I would venture to say that everyone in here, when you set out to do things, you do them with good intention. When you showed up here this weekend and agreed to be a part of what's happening this weekend, you did so with good intentions. You did so with the mindset that said, I'm coming for a purpose. Did you come here perfect? No, you did not. Did I come here perfect? No, I did not. But what I did come here as, a Christian trying to put his best foot forward, with good intentions, with an honest heart, and a working hand. That's who I want to be. And if I ask you tonight, the darkness that's in your life, does it keep you separated from God? See, I grew up on a farm. And when you grow up on a farm, a lot of times you will have a wood stove. Anybody in here know what a wood stove is? All right. Welcome to the country, y'all. And what's important to chopping wood, right? You got to have a wood stove. You got to have wood to go in the stove. What's important? You got to have your axe, but hey, you got to have a wedge sometimes. You got to put the wedge in, and then you got to start beating at the wedge. Why? Because some of that wood's tough. And you got to have a way to start the split. Sometimes, a lot of times, the sin that's in our life serves as that wedge. And every time it gets hit, every time it's capitalized upon, it's creating a strike between us and God. And every time that wedge goes a little deeper and it creates the bigger split, there's one thing that's constant. It's the axe. The wedge goes deeper, the wood starts to split, and eventually it doesn't serve any more purpose. The only thing it's done is rip it to pieces. God is a constant in our life. And no matter how dark you think it might be, or how dark it continues to be sometimes, God is constant. Remember this morning I shared with you that when the Bible tells you something, it tells you that for a purpose, and it's our job to take it and to use it. And when you and I, we know that God is the same. God never changes. God is consistent. He is what we need. That God chose you. The question is, are you choosing Him? And if the darkness that's in your life is something that you want to be delivered from, you have to choose Him. And you have to choose Him every time. Sin is the easy thing to do. It's the easiest route. Sometimes it's the most chosen route. But remember, you are a chosen people. There's more expected from us. We're supposed to be above that. We're supposed to make adjustments in our life so that those imperfections are covered, so that we know that we have done everything that we can possibly do to keep ourselves in the light. If you really want to be delivered from the darkness, you have to choose God. And maybe the case is that you've chose to stay in the dark. Maybe you didn't want to be delivered from the darkness. Have you seen these things where Domino's is doing all these unique things about, like, they're patching your roads if you hit the pothole and your pizza gets destroyed? Have you seen all these crazy things they're doing? Do you know why they're doing that? Because they want you. They're after you. They want your business. You're important to them. You remember that package that I was asking you about? And when it gets delivered, how precious it is to you? Because you worked for it. You bought it. You purchased it. It's yours. You worked for it. You wanted it. And you laid by things that you had to do without to get it. Do you realize the sin you're trying to get away from? You can get away from it. Because the one who died for you, those sins that you're giving into, those sins that eat us alive, there's a thing called victory. And we get to live in it. Because Jesus bought it. He paid for it. He worked for it. He put things aside to provide it. And then He gave it. That is delivery from the darkness. You want to know how to get away from darkness? You want to know how to get away from sin? Give your life to God. Because He chose you. He picked us. We are His. Are you living for Him? The question falls on you tonight. Does the darkness just eat you alive? Does it keep you from being who you want to be? And if it does, why do you continue to give yourself to it? When there is a God who loves you, who needs you, who created you, and He chose you. Why continue to give yourself to the darkness? The delivery is there. The victory is ours. It's our choice to do it the right way. There's a song of invitation that's been prepared. And it's designed for us to take an opportunity to look at our hearts, to look at our minds, to look at our soul, and to make sure that they are pure. And if they are dark, now's the time. Now's the opportunity. And now is your responsibility to get in the light. Can we help you? We want to. And we need you to come as we stand and as we sing.